Anyway, here we are. So let's start out by talking for a moment about the third gate, which is one of your standalone mysteries for your enigmologist, and took place in Egypt, strangely enough.
Yes, it did, and also in the area known as the Sud, this trackless swampland south of Egypt, where, according to my book, the original king of Egypt, Narmer, united the upper and lower kingdoms, and his grave and tomb had never been found, and so of course it seemed to be the perfect idea for a novel, and that became in time the third gate.
Which was set in a very swampy kind of, terrible swamp, as a matter of fact.
A really terrible spot, yeah. And all of a sudden your audio's gone out.
Our audio cut out?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Have mine changed at all?
No, not
You
at all.
sound good.
Okay, I don't know what's going on.
It's all good on this end.
Okay. Anyway, yes, it's an area of hundreds of miles of trackless swamp. People think of Egypt and the area south of Egypt being all desert, but this is, as we'll tell you about in our new book, PHARAOH KEY, the area is known as the Sud, is a disgusting, awful swamp, which is almost impassable past the upper reaches of the Nile. And it goes on for literally hundreds of miles. And a lot of my solo books are set in very remote places, often at the bottom of the seabed or in the Yukon, and this seemed like an ideal place to set one of my solo books, simply because I had an idea for an Egyptian novel set in a particular early period of Egyptian history, and this was, I knew, was the last thing anybody was going to think about when it came to a book about Egyptian history. You didn't happen to go there, did you?
No, we did go to Egypt, but we did a more standard tourist trip. However, Doug, I understand, has been to Egypt, and why don't you tell us about your contribution here to the actual Egyptian research?
Well, it was about 20 years ago I went to Egypt doing a story for the New Yorker magazine. I don't know if you remember, but they found a new tomb in the Valley of the Kings called KV5. And so I went there to write about this, and as part of this research, it turns out that's the largest tomb in the Valley of the Kings, and the archaeologist had uncovered 97 rooms in this tomb.
Wow.
It was the tomb of the sons of Ramses the Great, of which there were many sons. And I had the chance to fulfill a childhood dream, because about 60 or 70 of the rooms in the tomb were still sealed. And so I said to the archaeologist, do you think it'd be possible if I could be the first one in one of these rooms? I've always wanted to be the first one in an Egyptian tomb. He said, that would be highly irregular. And I said, please? He said, well, all right. So we went to the way back of the tomb, and he found the meanest, smallest, most insignificant doorway he could find. And then he had his workmen, cut a hole at the top, just below the lintel at the top of the door. And then I was like, well, how am I going to get up there? Where's the ladder? And he said, oh, don't worry, the workmen will put you through there. So they picked me up head first and just shoved me through this hole. And I fell into this room, this tomb, this little burial chamber. And I heard the archaeologist, his name was Kent Weeks, he said, what do you see? Anything? Now this tomb, by the way, had been robbed in antiquity. So they had not uncovered anything, any gold or anything like that, just smashed up stuff. And so I said, oh my God, gold. everywhere the glint of gold. And he's like, what? What are you talking about? Bull! Get out of here! You're lying. That's what Howard Carter said. You're pulling my leg, aren't you? And I said, yeah. It's the room's robbed like all the others. He said, oh, thank God. I thought I was giving some schmuck of a journalist. I just gave away the find of a lifetime to some worthless journalist.
Doug, you should have said snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Well, there actually were snakes that we had to watch out for. Cobras.
Live in the tomb?
No, but they did go into the tomb. Yes, there are snakes all through those hills, and if you go past the Valley of the Kings, there's the Valley of the Queens, and then you go to the Valley of the Nobles, and the Valley of the Nobles is where all the snakes are, because they don't clear them out of that area.
I suppose it's fairly obvious that the nomenclature for the tombs, KV whatever, stands for kings. It's sort of like Mozart, when they say it's going to be Kirschel, whatever it is. It's the nomenclature. But I haven't heard too many BCs as opposed to BKs. Do they use the same thing for the Valley of the Queens?
I don't know. It's a good question. You go to the Valley of the Queens and the Valley of the Nobles, and there's nobody there, and there are no trails, and you can literally wander into these tombs, and in fact, you can fall into tombs. And there was a British tourist, a woman, who fell into a tomb. It was vertical, because a lot of the entrances are vertical, and she was there until she starved to death, or died of thirst. And she was calling out for days, and nobody heard her.
And that didn't make it into your book?
No, it didn't.
Wow, an opportunity wasted. I can see that.
Maybe a future book.
So how did you and Doug utilize, your imagination, his actual presence on the ground to formulate the Pharaoh's Key?
Well, part of the story I want to tell is actually the end of the book, because that's came up with the idea for the Physis disc, and how we will sort of make this our last Gideon book.
For now.
For now.
For now. Let's be clear.
Until the blog comes out, when we may reconsider it.
Right. If you could see the audience reaction, you would realize you're just going to put him to rest for now.
Well, I'm going to ask that question. How many people would like this to be the last Gideon novel? How many people would like this not to be the last Gideon novel?
Yay, it's unanimous.
All right, we have a unanimous vote here, Lincoln.
Okay, well, listen. We'll tell you about what's going to temporarily take Gideon's place, and then Doug can take another vote. And hopefully the unanimous vote will be for what we're going to do instead, and if not, we're in a world of trouble. But anyway, when it came time to reach the end of this book, if you've read the flap copy or the catalog copy, I'm not going to give you any spoilers here, but of course, what do you expect at the end of a book set in Egypt, where adventurers are crossing deserts and they find something hidden at the end of the map? What do you expect? Treasure. Yes, treasure. And so, especially in Egypt, you assume that treasure belongs to a king. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Give everybody a gold star for me. And Doug and I were not above feeling the same way. And this is both a good thing and a bad thing, because we thought, well, if the readers come along with us on all these adventures, and there are a lot of them, it's not a bad book, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in it. If the reader comes along all this way, we're going to have to give them a fantastic ending. And that means something that they expect, but it also means, because this is a Preston and Child novel, we can't just give them the obvious. And the obvious would be treasure left by a king. And so Doug and I thought for literally weeks what we could do to make this different. And we thought, well, you make it this, not a king, it could be a queen, and it could be this particular queen that is, instead of very complicated things. And then, I don't know what we were drinking or smoking. I think it was Doug, because he's been through more than I do, but there was a bizarre idea that came out of nowhere. I mean, both said, oh my God, no, do you think we can do that? Do you think we can get away with that? And Doug said, yes, of course, we got to do that. And I got cold feet. I said, we really can't do that. That's just too amazing. That is the most bizarre and incredible idea and controversial idea I've ever heard of. And I eventually talked him down into making it a little bit more, well, less mind-blowing, but still hopefully incredibly satisfying. Because Doug is the one who's always ready to rush off and go onto an island that says no trespassing, or be arrested. And I'm the one who's going to stand back in the boat. So, give me a yell when you're ready, and I'll come in and pick you up.
You are never going to let go of the role of editor, are you?
He wouldn't even bail me out. I mean, no, when I was arrested on Hart Island, he said he couldn't bail me out. He was busy. And then he said, did you give my name? I said, yeah, I did. He said, oh my God, how could you?
Kind of like the Pentagon Papers. It was Dan Ellsberg who was in problem, wasn't his editor, So I mean, I told you not to do it.
Do it anyway. All right.
So that is just a roundabout way of saying that we have what we think is a kick-ass ending to this story, and we'll fight anybody who doesn't agree with us.
So what's the kick-ass beginning of this story?
Doug?
Well, well, the way it starts is that Eli Glynn disappears, and he shuts down EES, which is the company that Gideon has been working for, and he gives Gideon and his associate Garza 1 hour to clear out. I mean, they're essentially fired, and so they're both really pissed off about it, and so on their way out, they decide to rip off EES and Glynn, and so they rip him off by stealing the translation of the Phaistos disc, which is this is an actual artifact that was found in a burned palace in Crete in 1908. It's a 3,500-year-old disc with an undeciphered script on it. And no one's ever been able to decipher it, although a lot of people claim to have deciphered it, but they're all lying. No one has ever deciphered it. But Eli Glynn, 5 years ago, put a dedicated code-breaking computer onto deciphering this disk. And as they're leaving, the computer beeps and says, done! He said, let's download it and take it. So they download the translation and they take it. And after they fiddle around with it for a while, they realize it's directions. It's a map, a very odd sort of map, to a location in the eastern desert of Egypt, which is very remote. It's even more remote. It's remoter than the Sahara Desert. But it doesn't say what's at this location. So they start talking about it over drinks, and after about the third drink, they say, "Look, it's a map. There's got to be something of value here. And that damned Eli Glynn has ripped us off and betrayed us. And so let's go to that location and find out what's there. And if it's of value, which we're pretty sure it is, let's just take it for ourselves. We'll not only steal it from EES, but we'll steal it from Egypt as well. We will take it out of Egypt, and we'll live like kings for the rest of our lives." Well, as you know, Gideon doesn't have a long time to live, but he's into the whole idea of the adventure. So that's how it starts.
Okay.
Of course, things are never as they seem.
No. And when you go into a super remote location, you can find super remote and interesting things. How many of you have read the Amelia Peabody series? Well, you guys have flunked. Come on. It's one of the great Egypt series of all time. It's Victorian, and Radcliffe Emerson is basically Flinders Petrie. But they're in the Valley of the King, and they're doing all these wonderful things. And I think it's The Last Camel Died at Noon, which is one of my favorite titles.
No. I know what that book is.
Which one is it where they go off into the desert and find the interesting civilization?
I know that opening line. That's from The Key to Rebecca.
What, The Last Camel Died at Noon? Well, that's the actual title of the Amelia Peabody book. Sorry, I know that's true.
Oh, really?
It really is, yes. And I'm pretty, anyway, if you guys are interested in Egypt and these kinds of adventures, you need to start with the crocodile on the sandbank and read your way forward. They are amazing. And in fact, I promoted this book as Amelia Peabody and Indiana Jones, except I spelled it Indian Jones, so I'm pretty sure most of you fixed that, but my apologies.
No, that was your spell correct.
No, it was me. I just blew it. But anyway, you do expect if you go off to some completely remote area where nobody ever ventures that you might find something really interesting. And so they do.
Yeah, there are things in Egypt that when we went into I insisted when I was in Egypt back years ago, I said, well, let's go into the Valley of the Nobles. And the guide, he had a guide, he said, no, don't go, snake. I said, that's where I want to go, where there's snakes and nobody goes. So we rode donkeys into the Valley of the Nobles, and it was this completely deserted desert valley. And I was with an editor of the New Yorker, Carolyn Graham, and my God, she said, what's that on the ground? And she went down and she picked it up. I swear to you, it was a mummified finger.
Oh.
And I mean, there it was, the fingernail, the whole thing. And she still has that mummified finger.
As a letter opener? I was sure he was going to say a cobra, weren't you? Yeah. It worked out that way. All right, so we probably don't want to talk about what they actually found because that would be a spoiler. But if you're going to travel into truly remote Egypt, what kind of travel are you on? What's your vehicular fallback?
Camel.
That's right. Yeah, go with a camel. People think dune buggies but they couldn't possibly traverse the kind of sand, and in our case, rock, because a lot of the area in the southern is the Halaib Triangle. Doug, is that the proper pronunciation?
That's right.
It's full of these arroyos and wadis and canyons full of sharp rock.
And
which would
mile-high mountains, tremendous mountain ranges. Yeah.
And this is really a no man's land. It's a border, a contested border between Egypt and
Ethiopia.
Yeah. And it was like 100 years ago, wasn't it? There was a war, and they decided this land isn't worth dying over, and they've been no man's land ever since.
Well, the British, I think what happened was the British drew two boundaries, and they were different, and so Ethiopia and Egypt both claimed this triangle of land that is, but nobody lives there. It's worthless land, but nobody dares go in there because it's a kind of a DMZ.
So it's not directly south like the Sudan. It's southwest.
It's southwest. It's the eastern desert of Egypt, which the Sahara is west of the Nile. The eastern desert is the desert between the Nile and the Red Sea.
Right.
And it's a tremendously rugged desert. They're towering mountains, and it's really, really rugged. It's way different than the Sahara Desert.
So I thought when I was reading this book that one or both of you had overdosed on Ivanhoe and had always wanted to have, one of those great medieval tourneys, where people were in armor and on their trusty steeds and going at it and so forth. So you managed your own version of Ivanhoe in this book. I loved it.
on camels.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, it's really exciting. I mean, there's, jousts and all kinds of fun stuff. You had a great time with this, Mark, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. We did. We really
We
had
were
fun writing.
definitely channeling H. Rider Haggard and Rudyard Kipling, as we were writing it.
For
It
sure.
was an old-fashioned adventure stories in a lot of ways. It really was.
King Solomon's Mines. Do you remember that? Do any of you remember King Solomon's Mines? With Stuart Granger and Deborah Kerr. She went into the desert with hair she could sit on, and miraculously at some point, without benefit of shampoo or in fact even scissors, she hacked off her hair and appeared as though she'd just been in a Mayfair beauty salon. And I remember that. It ruined my entire approach to adventure because it can't be that hard. But seriously, it was a really great book, and there was a whole treasure involved, right? The whole thing was a treasure hunt going after what was in King Solomon's Mines. I miss books like that. You know?
Except in our book, the difference is when at the end, when they get to the actual tomb, they open up and it's empty, and they're incredibly disappointed. And then, for the first time, Gideon thinks to turn the priceless disc over, and it says, "Made in China."
That was a really fake ending, guys. Just disregard this. This whole thing. All right. So, for anybody who's not familiar with Gideon, one of you should reacquaint us with what his backstory is, because it's it's a tragic story.
Well, Link, do you want to tell him what?
Okay, sure. Gideon crew. We set out to, when we were asked actually to write a second series, we set out very intentionally to write a very different character than Pendergast. Pendergast is sort of reserved and eccentric and aloof and intellectual, and we made Gideon Crew into a kind of a ne'er-do-well. We argued about what his background should be, and we decided he should be an art thief.
But also a nuclear physicist as well. He's a brilliant guy. He's
As
not
an
really
artist.
a ne'er-do-well. He's just underneath it. He's
assembling nuclear triggers and things like that when he wasn't stealing from the local historical society. The beginning of the first book was a fairly long introduction to his getting revenge on what happened to his father when he was young, and that brought him to Eli Glynn's attention. Eli Glynn's a character that we had in the book The Ice Limit, and he perished with many other people in the ship at the end of that book. And then he wouldn't stay dead. We liked him to until he wouldn't.
Miraculously, as a novelist, you have powers.
So what we did was we sort of, as we often like to do in our book, we sort of do this like a metaverse. We take 2 or 3 different characters from different books and I'll put them together. And in this case, Eli began to be the boss who was then Gideon off on these strange adventures. And but the way he persuaded Gideon to work for him, or one of the ways, Eli is a very clever fellow, is that he pointed out that Gideon had a disease. It's the vein of Galen. Doug, right? It's a D.
Yeah. Maynard Galen malformation in the brain.
Yeah, it's essentially a strangely shaped vein that moves in the wrong direction toward the back of the brain. That not always, but in Gideon's case, was inevitably fatal, and he had a year to live. And so we like the idea. It's kind of like that old TV show, Run for Your Life with Ben Gazzara. Yeah. Except in that show, Ben Gazzara fell in love with some woman every week, and then he had to leave her at the end. It kind of got boring after 5 or 6 times. But in this case, we made sure that Gideon had a really exciting adventure, but in the back of his mind all the time, it's the fact that he was on a clock. And so when it came to this book, we had a real issue. What were we going to do? How are we going to end it? Are we really going to have him perish? You know, we had thought about ending him in the last book when there was a nuclear explosion. That's not a good way to go out. We'll keep him around. And we're not going to tell you what we did, but it was really difficult for us to decide what to do, because he was actually, and he is, the hero of 4 novels. I mean, he's a central character throughout. And we've learned the hard way that you know, killing off secondary characters like Bill Smithback.
Yeah.
We had to go into the witness protection program after that. So we didn't want, you know, the same thing to happen with Gideon. So it doesn't. I mean, not with the kind of finality that happened to old Bill.
Yeah, but Lincoln, you've already demonstrated that you can bring people back from the dead with your miraculous powers. So I'm not sure that it's all
Not
that.
Bill Smithback, though. Doug said, you know, people always bring characters back from the dead, and you know, people are going to assume that we're going to do it this time, so let's make sure somehow that people know he's dead. So we had this horrible, grotesque autopsy scene where, you know, poor Bill is you know, taken apart, you know, organ by organ and weighed, and so maybe he comes back, but if so, it'll be in a horror movie.
So one thing we haven't mentioned about Gideon is, in this odd combination of art thief and nuclear physicist, the only place he could actually really do that is Santa Fe, with Sandia, the labs right nearby. So miraculously, he's in Santa Fe, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yay! So that's your territory, right?
Well, it is. Yeah, I actually have friends who work at Los Alamos, and on nuclear weapons. And you ask them what they do, and they say, "Oh, well, you know, I'm on the stockpile stewardship program." So what's that? Well, I wish I could tell you. I just want to make sure they work. You know, we don't want them rotting in their storage. You know, we're just going to make sure they're going to go off, right? And I was like, oh, I'm so reassuring. But, yeah. So, but you know, they are kind of outlaw. There is an outlaw mentality up at Los Alamos because of what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are really smart, but they're not, you know, straight and narrow types. So Gideon is very much in keeping with that kind of personality.
Well, but San Diego National Labs is in Albuquerque, aren't they also
Right.
engaged in this
They
kind of
are,
thing?
yeah, they are,
And so
yes.
it's a nexus right there.
Right, right.
And then Santa Fe is a huge art capital. Back before the terrible recession, there was an art axis. It was Santa Fe, Scottsdale, and La Jolla. And I don't know because the Scottsdale art market is not what it used to be, but it was really, in the 90s, it was really huge. Our first Poison Pen store was over across from Ali's, right in the middle of all those art galleries, and they were just booming. And then it changed, but Santa Fe has kept its moho, so to speak, in the art world, right?
It has, yeah. They claim to be the 3rd largest art market in the country. But I was talking to an art dealer, Forrest, and he said, "Oh yeah, I told that to the Santa Fe, New Mexican 20 years ago, and they printed it, and now everyone else has printed it, but it was just a damn lie. I just made it up." So it's amazing. Once it gets into print, it just gets repeated and repeated.
Fake news. Yeah, right. You should do that. But anyway, no, I mean, it's just interesting about Gideon that he combines these two things and, you know, is in Santa Fe.
Well, I'd like to point out that Doug is either the most interesting or most geeky person imaginable to both have studied in great detail both physics and art history in college, so that he's the only person in America probably to pull this off.
Well, it has led him to an interesting and varied career, because not only is he a novelist, but he is a journalist, as we all know from like The Lost City of the Monkey God, but not your only adventure. You really like to go off to strange and terrible places and subject yourself to disease and predators and other stuff, and yet here you are.
Well, you know, when you're a journalist, when bad things happen to you, that's good. And when terrible things happen to you, that's even better, as long as you survive it. Because I remember when I learned I had leishmaniasis, the first thought that went through my head was, oh, this is going to double my advance.
This is how the novelist thinks, right? It's all material. How many of you read The Lost City of the Monkey God? Excellent. If you've missed it, you've made a horrible mistake. It's fabulous and just as exciting as any of the books that Doug and Lincoln have written together. And if you haven't read Lincoln's standalone books about, what's the name of the enigmologist? Jeremy Logan, right? I think the Jeremy Logans are absolutely fabulous. So, you know, you never really run out of things to read. Which leads me, Lincoln, to ask you, what is going on with Jeremy Logan? Surely it's his turn.
Yes. Well, Jeremy Logan is, it's funny. You're the first person I'm telling this to, but Jeremy Logan was going in a certain direction in his next adventure. And then I got to speaking to a cardiologist, a Harvard cardiologist, a few days ago. And it was, what we talked about was so interesting that I threw away the first 100 pages and started over.
Wow.
It'll probably take another 3 years to see light of day, but I think it'll be a great read when it does finally come out.
So what is it that you two are planning in addition to Pendergast? Yeah. You've been talking about something new.
Well, we are. We're launching a new series, and we're taking a character that we really love out of the Pendergast novels. She was the star. First, she was the star of Thunderhead, and then she was Cabinet of Curiosities, and that's Nora Kelly, the archaeologist. And so she's going to star in her own series. Now, Pendergast may make a cameo appearance or two, but this book, which we've already started to work on, because we often are, working on several books at once in various stages, takes place in the mountains of, it takes place near Truckee Pass in between Nevada and California, where the Donner Party had its very sad end. And it's about an archaeological excavation of one of the Donner campsites, and horrifying things are found. Worse than what you might even think.
Including a cookbook.
You didn't actually say that, did you?
Did you ever see that
science fiction?
No, that Twilight Zone episode, To Serve Man?
Yeah.
It's a cookbook!
Is this the gateway to Lake Tahoe? It is kind of, isn't it? Don't you go?
It is, yeah.
Truckee, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, it's now called Donner Pass. Used to be called Truckee Pass.
But that's not the only interesting thing about this new series. We wanted to have a series with a woman as the protagonist. We also wanted to bring Nora Kelly back because we figured that her archaeological expertise was really interesting, and the 3 books she appeared in, Cemetery Dance, Thunderhead, Cabinet of Curiosities, actually 4, Blue Labyrinth, made her an obvious choice as a series character, but it gave us a chance to also, when she finally gets involved in the Donner Party mystery and bad things start to happen, a scrappy young FBI trainee comes along to investigate what's going on, and her name is Corey Swanson, who was one of Doug's favorite characters and mine too, and so we were able to shoehorn 2 of our favorite female characters into this book and begin a new series starring them. So I guess this is the moment of truth. Are you okay with that? Gideon can take a vacation while Nora and Corey get into trouble?
Sure.
Okay.
As long as it's a vacation, but you didn't want to use those ominous words, the last
Well,
Gideon
he's
crew.
on ice. So let's
I don't know why he can't infiltrate himself into a book with Nora and Carol Lee. Come on, you know. he doesn't-
Constant green.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't die. There's all kinds
yeah,
of potential
no.
there. Right. So, before we switch to questions, there's one other thing I wanted to do because I screwed up something. If you have got a copy of the book, did you open it? All right, you want to open it to the title page. Notice you got copies signed by both authors, which we ran out of, so many people won't have, but you do. And you should see on the title page a photo of an incredible camel.
Yes.
Now, you might think that this is a commercial photo that we ripped off the internet, but in point of fact, the photographer is actually here. And she's going to kill me, but I would like my daughter Susan, who took this photo, to stand up. And my apologies to her for not giving her a photo credit. Right. Yay. And Susan has a lot of other actually wonderful Egyptian photos that would have been fun to show tonight, but there's only so much we can do with one AV presence at a time. But anyway, so your photo is a very special photo and not something that you can just randomly buy off the internet or whatever it is. I think the camel has amazing personality. And Miles did the cartouche and used a translation program. And remind me, is it the title of the book or Gideon? What does the cartouche say?
It says the PHARAOH Key.
It says
Key,
the
sorry.
okay. So the title of the book, the PHARAOH Key, is what you see in hieroglyphs in the cartouche. So, and then on the back you will get to see. So Miles gets a shout out also for making this very cool insert.
It was his
Yay.
idea. It was Doug's idea.
And if you noticed, it's signed by Gideon Crew, evidence that he's a real person, right? And not going anywhere. Right. So, we're happy to take questions from the audience if any of you have questions you would like to ask. Sorry, did I see anybody?
What do we have in line for Aloysius Pendergast?
What's next?
Yes, please.
Well, Lincoln and I are just about a week away from finishing the next Pendergast. And it's called Verses for the Dead.
The what?
Verses for the Dead.
Did finally decide on a
Yes.
title.
And it will be published in January. And it mostly takes place in Florida.
Imagine that.
Florida? Who in the world would set a book in Florida? Wow! It must-
Lincoln and I had to go to Florida to research the book, and we stayed at the Fontainebleau Hotel, and we ate and drank our way through Florida, and then we drove way out into the Everglades, and we almost were eaten by alligators, so we had quite a lot of fun doing our research.
You have a great.
Getting leishmaniasis is bad. You know, that's what I was saying about at Miami Beach for a couple of days. That was just awful.
And if you were in the Everglades, you had a better chance to be crushed to death by pythons than actually eaten by alligators. Have they been able to do anything to reduce, you know, they've had like set out rewards for people to, you know, kill off the giant snakes and so forth. Has that gone anywhere?
I don't know, but there certainly are lots of alligators. Doug and I are driving along Alligator Alley. It's named that for a reason. They're just scads of them lying on top of each other, you know, the black, glistening, prehistoric monsters. Really creepy. And so we looked at that and we said, good. And not far from where I live in Florida is a place called Mayaca State Park. And inside it, away from all the other tourist spots, is a place called the Mayaca Deep Hole, where I think the rangers let 10 people a day go into. And there's literally You can Google it, and there's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of alligators around this pool, on top of each other, and of course nobody knows how deep it is. The Floridians say it's bottomless, but nobody knows because nobody's been stupid enough to go out there, from the drop of a plumb line. But the whole bayou setting works, contrasted with the glitter of Miami and a variety of murders that take place there. Just can make such a great dichotomy of locations that we simply couldn't leave it alone.
So in your careful research in Miami Beach, did you happen to go to Joe's Stone Crab House where you can order the only really great key lime pie ever? Other people go for crab, but I'm telling you people, seriously, you want to go for the key lime pie. No? Doesn't appear in the book?
No, it does not.
My husband would say that the only reason to go to Miami Beach is to eat at Joe's Stone Crab House. Right, which I've done, which is a lot of fun.
Well, we might just have to add it. We still
You
have
might.
a week.
You still
We
have a
have a
week.
week at Joe's Stone Crab House.
If I were going to celebrate the conclusion of an adventure, I would go to Joe's then, and I would order pie, alcohol and pie, maybe, but pie. For sure.
Margarita lime pie.
There you go. Right. No, seriously, it's a Miami institution, a Miami Beach institution.
Just
Anybody
skip the
else?
entree and go right to the good part.
There you go. Yes, Jim.
My father is 98, and he was getting very nervous that your latest Pendergast didn't come out at Christmas, but was delayed. But he said you did all right.
Good.
It was only January. It was like 2 weeks after Christmas. Come on, it's not that close.
Well, in 98, he gets nervous.
Well, you should all write to their publisher and insist that the next one also come out in early January because it's a really great time for that. Yeah. Anybody else have a question?
Tell your father that we're like ducks. We seem kind of placid on the surface, but underneath we're paddling as fast as we can. The next Pendergast will be out soon.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for just so many years of great reading pleasure and enjoying an individual. This is a Gideon Crew question. I've always wondered, I never thought I'd get to actually ask you, but in The Lost Island, that book got so wild, and I thought, were you guys experimenting with peyote? Or your imaginations just exploded in that book, and I always thought it was interesting.
Well, that was Lincoln with his batches of LSD brewing up.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, the question is that the Lost Island got so wild at the end, such a crazy ending that were Lincoln and I experimenting with drugs when we wrote the ending to that book. And the answer is I don't know, Lincoln. How did that happen? How did we become so outré?
Well, the funny thing that question makes me think of is, has this reader read Beyond the Ice Limit?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, which is worse?
To me, that's logarithmically more crazy than the ending of Lost Island, which admittedly is very crazy. But in the case of Beyond the Ice Limit, we were hard up against the deadline, and Doug sort of went off, and I didn't hear from him for 3 weeks, and he came back with like half of the book, and it went in this bizarre direction. I'm reading it. Where do these worms come from? So speaking of, I don't know what kind of mushrooms grow around Santa Fe, but maybe they played a part in both the Lost Island and Beyond the Ice Limit.
Very good question. I'm glad you got to answer it. Does anybody else have one? No? Yes? Oh, good.
In the new Pendergast novel, does Constance make an appearance? Very, very cameo appearance. Very cameo. Is that good or bad?
Somebody say good.
Good.
Some people.
Kind of
Wait,
like Constance.
raise your hand if you don't like Constance. Raise your hand if you like Constance.
Yeah. Almost unanimous, Lincoln.
But there are some who don't like.
She belongs
No,
to
they
Diogenes.
do like
She belongs
Constance.
to Diogenes.
Okay, in that case, we will be sure that at least one chapter.
See, you guys get to actually vote. The book isn't quite done yet.
Works
for me. Yeah. Jim, did you have another
Yeah,
question?
just along Constance Green, we dealt with Tibetan Buddhists for over 50 years, and I introduced them to the Tibetan book about Constance Green going into the lamasery,
Yeah.
and they get thrilled when you talk about the green Tara, and they see it very coincidental in the play of words, and so that just kudos for that, because they would say Tashi delay, which means hello and keep going. So Tashi delay from our Tibetan friends.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Well, that's good to know. That
Yeah, the
not-
dance of death.
Yeah.
I think that was the.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you
yeah.
very much. Maybe you can give Doug some Chong Ron lessons.
Yeah, I always ask them about that, and they just go.
There's actually a Tibetan, I think I have this right, isn't there a Tibetan enclave in Santa Fe? Susan?
There is, yes.
Yeah, the Lama
Up
Foundation.
on Canyon Road or whatever, I'm pretty sure.
Lama Foundation.
Right, there is, and there for a long time was also, or maybe still there, a colony of Sikh, which of course has nothing to do with Tibetans or anything,
Well-
but it's another interesting cultural, nucleus in Santa Fe.
There is a connection when the Red Chinese came into China, burning the lamaseries and the Presbyterian missionaries there. The Dalai Lama fled into Sikh territory
Oh, did he?
in
Okay.
Punjab, and that he consulted an oracle. The Dalai Lama consulted an oracle that told him to leave now because of the little ant deities were telling him to leave. So that the Sikhs welcomed the Dalai Lamas and the women who had cut their hair and wore men's trousers because they were being raped by the Red Chinese coming into Tibet. So the Sikhs were very helpful, and they were very militant to keep.
Yeah, well, the Sikhs were always great warriors.
Yeah,
Very tall, scimitars, lots of hair,
yeah, that's,
all there is.
yeah. Their
Yeah.
name's Singh,
Right.
means lion.
Yep. Right. Anybody else? Yes.
Any more movement on a television series based on Pendergast?
Anything about a television
Well,
series?
unfortunately, the television series is died.
Oh.
Canceled.
Can you resurrect it?
Special powers?
Lincoln, how about it?
Special power.
Believe me, I've tried.
No, it's. I mean, it's not totally dead. It's just that incarnation is dead. But
Sometimes you just have to wait till the time is right, till the right person or the right showrunner comes along, and then good things happen. It's not like the books went away after all.
That really hurt because that thing was in production or pre-production for about a year, and I got to the very last step, and the very last person said no. That's I understand.
the reason why it's they're having such a problem is that when we sold the rights to Paramount Pictures for the Relic, they acquired the movie rights to the Pendergast character, even though he never appeared in the movie. And so Paramount Pictures owns the rights to that character, so they're the only company that can develop a series. And so that they did try to develop this series, but some schmuck at Paramount, highly placed, some guy just was like, look, said, nope, we're not going to do that. And that was it.
You have a name?
Aha, hip squad is forming.
Me too. Me too.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you buy the rights back?
We talked about that, and here's what our agent said. He said they'll never sell you the rights back or sell the rights to anybody else, because if a series is made, a successful series is made after they let the rights go, the people at Paramount who were responsible for letting the rights go all get fired. Because they're like, well, what did you do? You sold the rights? How much did you get for them? Oh my God, you idiot! You know.
You're
So
fired.
and this happens frequently in Hollywood, where as a protective measure, the executives will not sell rights to a project or a character because they're worried that if whoever they sell it to makes a really big hit movie, they're all going to get fired. So.
All right, the good news is that that doesn't preclude you from having Gideon, or maybe it does Nora because she's in the Pendergast novels, but Gideon is in
Only if
his own universe, right?
Nora is a free agent because she was not in the Relic. They only own the characters in the Relic, all of them.
So my point is, should somebody make a series out of Gideon or Nora, and it becomes a big success, then it might prompt Paramount to do something about the Pendergast, you know. So you just don't know. They don't think like other people, so you know, there's just no logic to it. You just have to hope for the best, right?
Hollywood is not a meritocracy. It's something else. I don't know what, but
True.
Maybe Diogenes.
Diogenes is a free agent too.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should put Diogenes on the problem.
That's so
You would give me the guy, yeah.
It's like Sherlock Holmes if Mycroft were the whole. I love that. Yeah, that's a really good idea, Doug.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll
get
tell
that
him that
name.
next week when I see him for drinks.
Yeah.
On a weekly basis. It's a terrible habit, but one I find very hard to say.
It's a very good idea. Well, Lincoln, it's been lovely talking to you. Is there any final thing you would like to say to our audience, or Doug, or whatever?
I just want to say to all of you, who I can't see, but I appreciate your being there and supporting us, and both Doug and I really hope you like the PHARAOH. Sorry, you're skimming blank for a minute there.
The PHARAOH Key, is that what you're
I
talking
hope
about?
you like the PHARAOH Key because when you see what happened at the end, you'll see what I'm talking about the fight I had to go through to keep the book from being so over the top that it just
So you asked the lost key question. Potentially an even more exciting ending coming. Right. Well, thank you, Lincoln. It's lovely to see you. Keep grooming that beard. I love it.
I